I'm Kadambri Raghukumar, and I've called Aotearoa, New Zealand home for about 15 years now. One of the many things that I love about this place is the thriving art scene. But in 2021, I want to get to know more artists who represent people like myself.
Forever, I'd never seen another Cambodian actor, I'd never met one, I'd never seen a Cambodian story on stage. You know, I think it was always drilled into us that we would have to create our own work because we couldn't rely on the industry to specifically write a role for a Cambodian actor or a character. That just would never happen.
I'd met Sarita So a few times socially, but never really got to see her in action. I have to admit, watching her play Digging to Cambodia felt like what a psychedelic trip could feel like. Between slivers of reality and dream, caught between laughter and silent internal tears and reflection.
I always wanted to be taken seriously, I wanted to be taken serious as a thinker, as a maker, and, I wanted to also talk about the state of my country and my views on, how we've ended up in the situation that we've ended up in. When I first did this as a 20-minute piece as part of my solo at Toi Whakaari, I was at a more cynical state with myself, and I was sort of saying, I think the world is screwed up, I think we as humans are screwed up, this is what we do to each other and what we do to ourselves. And then pretty much 15 years later was when I was like, yeah, we're screwed, but I have hope now. But then from that, I realised what was lacking in the work was my own and personal vulnerability, because it was all maybe it was too heady, too political, too intellectual, and the heart was missing from the piece. I felt sad about my country, but to just talk about it politically, it was very hard to get people to feel anything because it was all just cerebral. My understanding of my country or my language or my culture is not just, the political climate, it's also through my parents and the stories that they've told me,
So I invite myself to join them at this table. There's something about having a meal with people you've come to know and admire through their work. Turns out Sarita's mum is one of them too. It's not just her cooking skills, but her journey to New Zealand has been extraordinary.
I never thought I'm still alive, I don't know where to go. Just the first time out from a jungle, big jungle, I just live in jungle. So after that, I come out from a jungle, so I don't know where to go. I try to walk out from a country to the border, Thai border. So walk day and night, thousands of people. And even old people or young or baby, just quiet walk out from the country. Take about 2 or 3 weeks, nearly monthly, from the Cambodia to the Thai border. When I flew from Thai to New Zealand, I came here by refugee, 1979. I'm very happy to be here. Now I'm good today because New Zealand helped me have a lot of refugees to here. I'm very proud also to stay here. Yeah. Bye.
It's been a long immersion over the years in Cambodian history and culture for Natano, Sarita's husband, who directed this iteration of Digging to Cambodia.
I just wanted to look at that script and go, these are the bones that we're going to be working with, and then cutting back to 2019, because I am in close relationship. That is my wife. That's my mother-in-law. I've been to Cambodia. I felt like the work was already kind of done, so I was kind of wearing that already. It's 15 years of I've shared meals with the history of it, and the feelings and the smells and the stuff of just being over there. I felt like I already had this zap into the actual world. I found it really easy to dive into it, because it was always a thing of checking back to her.
How do you unpack the idea of genocide, trauma, and healing to audiences both Cambodian and beyond, while trying to process these yourself as a creative whose life story is so entwined with these? I guess that's really why there have been multiple iterations of the play.
Still in the arts, yeah. In terms of betraying an audience's expectations, you're doing a setup, you bring them into this nice little world or whatever, they're having a great time, and then you disturb it by presenting them with several images. And you do the same thing again. There's another setup, it's another kind of idea, and you see that when they're suddenly warming into it and they think they know what the game is, then you disturb it again.
They were malevolent. They told me they were called the Red Khmer.
There's no full narrative in this piece. It's like it is based on the idea of memory and how memory jumps from here to there. Myself as the character, as I make believing that I'm existing through all these times, from like the Stone Age of the apsaras on the walls to concentration camps to a wax figure, in a theme park or whatever. You see these images in the museums and the faces of the people who died in that camp at the high school. And, for ages I'd just be staring at them, but then that's that realisation like that could have been me, And it's until I come to accept that point is when I'm able to move on and, come to a point where I speak my truth at the end.
Taking the play to Hawaii in 2022 is a big deal for Sarita and Latano. I guess for them it's part of their mission of wanting to reach out to wider audiences.
There's a great sense of freedom with it, as well as like responsibility, because you're always trying to balance between the art that you want to make and see, as well as trying to be able to communicate that to a mainstream audience who might not understand or know about Cambodian culture at all, as well as with a Cambodian audience who don't know anything about, I guess, like the Western form of theatre. So many of them have never seen themselves on the stage or reflected back at them. It just gives them permission to then go ahead and tell their version of the story, because this is my version of the story, it's not the story. So I would just hope that they would feel a sense of, I guess, belonging within this landscape, within, the theatre landscape of New Zealand, Aotearoa, and just give us their version of it as well, because then it's that continued sharing of stories and exchange and being like, we are actually all the same. Like, as human beings, you want the same things, you feel the same things. For me to actually be in the audience for once and see myself on stage is kind of like my end goal.
I think there's something about leaving home, and when that's not a choice, when you're being forced to leave home. The idea of choice is always highlighted in my work.
We were all Sri Lankans pretending to be Indians.
I first met Ahi about 10 years ago at a rehearsal for a play. Being Tamil myself, we sort of naturally connected over some random vernacular jokes. But as a Sri Lankan Tamil, for Ahi, getting to New Zealand wasn't something to take so lightly.
We left Sri Lanka because of the civil war, and there were a lot of things we couldn't talk about openly. Like, we could talk within family, but when it came to politics, we couldn't really talk about it openly because it was a divisive kind of point of contention. And this constant shift between extreme joy, play and magic, and then absolute destruction. And, very much seeing, I guess, your paradise being ripped apart and broken apart. So, I kind of fleet between both of that. When I think of arriving in Aotearoa, thinking about home, that's always in all my work.
Uncle, it wasn't my fault.
When I was in high school, I had artistic aspirations, but being the son of a migrant, always had this fear that, would this be a sustainable lifestyle or work career pathway? So there was always this kind of tension that I had to sit with. This mythical mainstream chase that we have as a waste of energy and time when we just had to keep making the work. So when I was thinking about my pathway, where I'm going to go, I've just focused on just making work. I believe that work creates work.
What have I told you about the importance of cleanliness, huh?
When I went to drama school, I was sitting in a really interesting place where I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do the directing course or the acting course. And I realized that I wanted to be an actor to learn, because to direct actors, I needed to learn how to be an actor first.
Ah, I see.
The reality, as I said, of coming out of drama school, realizing that the work opportunities are limited, but as a writer, as a director, I can create those opportunities for the actors. Those were really rough days. And of course, not everybody, there's options not to be in the arts. You could do other works, and I kept myself sustainable through that. And, multiple times when I've kind of like considered, okay, maybe it's time to let it go and go somewhere else. But, there's this thing that I kind of quite articulated in word, but I just knew that anything else would just not bring the same level of wholesome, completed fullness than it does than being in a room with a whole bunch of, beautiful makers.
Don't ask me why, but I put myself in a spot by volunteering to go through Ahi's Acting 101 warm-up session. Never too cool to be a fool, I guess. This is all new to me, just a disclaimer. Hey, Kalamari, come here, sit down.
Now he's
Damn, that was good. Hey, okay, now we're cutting. This is unusable.
If you had to order a morning coffee order for everyone, order to me.
Oh, hey, can I get a coffee, please?
Uncle.
Yo, can I get a coffee, please?
Kadambari.
Hi, can I get a coffee, please?
And then,
Oh, hey, can I get a coffee, please?
Yeah, cool. And so this is just like, like warming up the body. Once you activate all of these things, your imagination, your voice, your physicality, and really kind of owning space, holding space, and speaking your truth.
Nice, I like it.
Part of my learning over the last few years is to let go of some of my training, because when you go to drama school or when you train in certain institutions, you're learning craft, you're learning certain kind of techniques. But also, part of that is also about letting go of your habitual patterns, your intonations and your ways that you present yourself to create a transformative, different character. But in the kind of space that I work in, it is what comes with the performer that is the most interesting to me. The way that they speak, the way that they breathe is the most unique point about them. And that's what I'm motivated by. And that's why over the kind of few years, I've been more interested in works that we generate by ourselves with our communities, works that we are written for the people in mind who are going to be holding those stories, because I think that's not forcing me to be somebody else, but it's bringing yourself into the work. When it comes to these kind of entities that we break down, like what is community theatre and what is professional theatre, and are we sitting in this kind of middle intersection? Like when I go into practice, I'm just like motivated by what do you want to say, who do you want to say it to, and what do you want them to feel? And that's kind of looking at who are we making our art for, and who do we want to engage with our art. One of my philosophies is that I want to be the person that I needed when I graduated from drama school, because when I came out of drama school, there was nothing, there was no one, any support. And like I said, like it was companies like Tawato or like other Māori Pacifica practitioners that took me in and passed and shared their knowledge. So my practice now has been like, how can I, every time I learn something, impart that onto somebody else? And that's how our communities have grown. So I think constantly it's like looking at ways to how do I find people or give people the skills, the voice and the space to be heard, to be seen.
The temple, the playgrounds, you swept away every single house in this village, but you spared this one.
Ahi's come full circle with his first solo Morning After, and I'm hanging out watching him work with new actors for this latest iteration of the play.
As an actor, I'm trying to convince you, I'm trying to charm you, I'm trying to win you over, but I'm also information-wise trying to tell you the great things about my home country. Like the Morning After has been really interesting to go back and look at a play that I wrote almost 14 years and realizing how earnest I was, how angsty I was.
Hey, what is this?
So I think a lot of my work has been propelled by this need that I could clearly feel this elephant in the room that we're just not acknowledging and not talking about.
Hide! Pala! Pala!
I think it's definitely from a place of being unseen or feeling invisible. And I think that is something that I'm starting to excavate even more.
Catch it! Why you bastard, man?
Ahi's a real fosterer of sorts, and he doesn't seem like he's about to get off this mission of giving South Asian theatre and actors a real solid place on the stage in New Zealand.
Over 100,000 of my people remain lost, hidden, disappeared, awaiting to be unearthed. Excavated.
I think what New Zealand has given me is a realization of what gaps there are and spaces for me to be able to fill that in. I think the pace of life in New Zealand is a lot more slower. That has allowed some reflection time. In Sri Lanka, I mean, I was young when I left it, but I think when you have a tumultuous kind of path that's constantly there, I always wonder how creatives work in that space. I think being in New Zealand gives me a certain distance, a certain safety, a certain place to be a little bit more braver, to be able to articulate the things that I otherwise couldn't.
It's hard to explain to people that the immigrant experience is not just about telling stories of devastation. How can you say that immigrant experiences are one thing? It's not. If an immigrant is telling a story, it's an immigrant story.
I first met Sananda over some beers and samosas after a play, and I swear I died laughing at her jokes that day before I began to take her seriously. Not long after, I find that she means business when it comes to changing the narrative around the immigrant experience through theatre.
The part of India that I'm from is known for two things: sweets and arts. So arts was always part of my upbringing. My mum's a trained singer and dancer. My family have always been. My sister actually is a singer-songwriter. I just found theatre because it was a thing to do when we first moved here back in 2003. So I was always performing with the community group, but since 2005, I've been involved with Prayas and theatre. And it was just something to do as a hobby. It was a way for me to having some creative space. It was also about finding community. I have lifelong friends that I met through doing work with Prayas. It also was about just remembering art forms from back home and to remind ourselves sort of where we've come from and where we are. And that meant a lot to people who say came here. Like, I was lucky because we moved with family. There's so many people who don't have families, so it's a big whānau, you know? The goal of Prayas was to bring English language theatre from India to the mainstream public. It was to try and convert the belief that India is just about Bollywood and butter chicken. I feel like I still say that. And then it sort of became a little more prominent. The prominence of it grew in my life. And at some point, I decided that I needed to give back more, and having a full-time career elsewhere was just not, I couldn't marry the two.
Not sure why I put myself in these awkward situations, but I've been summoned to audition for a script of a play that Sananda is directing. So what is the script and what am I auditioning for? Am I auditioning? Yes, I am. What am I auditioning for?
You didn't see the paperwork when you came into audition?
No, I don't even know what I'm signing up for. I just thought I should come and learn a bit from you.
Just start from the top.
I brush the ridges underneath, where the edges almost kiss. Even when it's dark, I remember shells.
Okay, so now slow down a little bit.
I feel their smooth backs under my thumb.
Don't rush. There's no rush.
They'll come and snatch the gold away.
So, you know, there's so many things that are going missing. Do it like you're telling us a secret. Like you're telling the audience a secret.
There are times I remember I'm 15. I remember my ticket, the plane, watching the ocean from way above.
Chin up. Yeah.
Ooh, this is harder than I thought. Okay. There were times I thought the waves might take them, but the ocean always brings my shells back to me.
Great, Karen.
Have I got it all yet? Are we done? I love Auckland's theatre scene, but what I love even more is when people like Sandy get more actors and more stories on stage that represent people like me.
The cord that binds them bites into my skin.
So the immigrant experience and always having to make art, it's, I think, just a way of othering people. Because, look, in the global consumer culture, we've all grown up with Americanization. And I can't remember the last time that I wasn't influenced by, you know, something that I watched which was not from home. My accent, I always tell people I didn't live in America, I didn't grow up there. It's from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Because growing up, that's what I was watching on TV. You know, I wasn't watching high drama on Hindi TV. I was watching Buffy.
I'm going to the 10-day retreat, the Sylvester Stallone experience. You should come.
It goes back to the fact that there are so many different ways of being an Indian. When we first started, it was a sense of community, or people are performing works from back home, so we'll come and watch it. They kept coming back, so we were allowed the space to try different things. And I always want to be somebody who can hold that space. Don't hesitate in this space. That's when you get caught. We haven't been able to tell this story with colored people in the room.
Tell me how to plant the seeds.
I think it's really about finding people like you. That is so comforting. Good job, team. That was good.
Fill the world
Sananda's directing Trias's play First World Problems this year. As usual, the Basement Theatre is packed with community to support the massive cast.
Go back to your intentions, go back to your lines, make sure you know why you're telling these stories. This one is about introspection and relationships, and because they were written over lockdown, people had time and space, I guess, to think about what they wanted to say a bit more. The prompt we gave to the writers was texture. So it produced a wide range of works, and we whittled it down to 4 that we are going to stage. When we first were looking for a title to host these different voices, one of the main things was, if we were back in our own homes, in our own countries, we wouldn't be having this issue. So it's a first world problem we're having. So the idea that local migrant writers or South Asian writers are getting a say. And now it's just a home for wayward writing and performers to come together and make something fun.
Our brains are wired, and we can rewire it to live our truth. It will be another day.
Turns out that this scale and loose form of storytelling is really how the community relates to theatre. And this place is almost like their second home.
I think the reason people invest in community arts or migrant arts is I'm sure it's multifold, because it has been for me. Whoever comes in through the door for our open audition, we try to incorporate everybody into the piece. But it also grew to not just being on stage, but also the backstage, and the production community has grown and grown and grown. And so they come in, they get a bit of experience, and then they sort of move off, But then the community still exists. It's we're just bigger, and people that we've worked with in the past have gone on and done other things outside. It's always great to watch people develop outside, knowing that you had something to do with it, and something to do with giving them their wings, so to speak.
Great job, Kate.